Good afternoon, Rotarians, and this is our first meeting in August, and I'm so happy to be here and to see so many smiling faces and friends out there. As we begin our meeting as normal, I'm told that Mike George is going to have a 2 thumbs up prayer or reflection, followed by a rousing rendition of our Pledge of Allegiance by Sarah Swisher. So would you all rise, please?
Let us pray. Dear God, as Rotarians, we have always taken the lead role in protecting our community's greatest asset, its children. Let us be vigilant advocates for them, remembering that we must be their eyes, their ears, and their voices to protect them from dangers that they do not understand. Thank you for the individuals who make protecting children their vocation. Their patience and comprehension of these dangers provide us guideposts to follow. Let us use the knowledge gained today to share with others in our community, and perhaps it will improve the future of a child that we don't even know. Because in the end, we are measured not only by the good deeds we have done and that we know about, but also the good deeds we never knew we accomplished. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mike. I would like to thank our sponsor for this meeting, and it's Stapleton Insurance. Alex, wherever you are, thank you very much. Stapleton Insurance, thank you for sponsoring the meeting. I'm looking for Jim Park, and I can't see him under the lights. Okay, Jim, would you please introduce visiting Rotarians?
President Tim, we have 5 visiting Rotarians today. Visiting Rotarians, please stand as I read your name and remain standing until President Tim welcomes you. We have with us Leslie White from Bowling Green Rotary, Doreen Elhert from Bowling Green Rotary, Sally Kimball from Bowling Green, Pat Gorey from Oregon Northwood, and Kip Terrain from Fort Collins, Colorado.
Welcome, Leslie, Doreen, Sally, Pat, and Tip. It's so nice to have visiting Rotarians here, and thank you very much.
President.
Did you have one other?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. How come we got so many Bowling Green people here? Are you good? Is Bowling Green in revolt? Just a question. I invite members who have guests to come forward and introduce them. Do we have any guests?
Yeah, President Tim, it's my privilege to reintroduce Kip Terrain. He's a retired colonel from the Air Force and a new member of the Fort Collins Rotary Club, and so I thought he should come and visit Toledo Rotary and see another side of the Rotary world. So please welcome Kip.
Good afternoon. Today I have Candace Bishop, Manager of Community Affairs with Ann Grady Services.
Welcome. To all our guests and invited guests and Rotarians, this is the 10th largest Rotary Club in the world, and we're the best, so come on back another time. Now is a good time to turn off your phone, and if you're on social media, do whatever you want. The Youth Services has an announcement. Is Candace here? There she is.
Good afternoon, President Tim and fellow Rotarians. I'm here to talk to you today just to remind you yet another time in case you weren't here to hear it, and if you were here to hear it, I apologize, you'll have to hear it twice. maybe even this is your third time, that we are collecting for a teacher supply pantry for Glendale Fieldbach Elementary, for whom we already have a partnership. Thank you to everyone who's already brought things in. It is much appreciated. And I also wanted to just quickly remind everybody that the supplies are broken down by name, last name, only because we want to make sure that we have a wide variety of everything. But if you decide, hey, you know, my last name starts with something different and you want to buy something different, we encourage you to do so, but just make sure that you buy the one thing that's listed under your last name. Are there any questions, President Tim, as last week?
Actually, there are.
Okay.
So, Candace, when does this thing come to an end? When are you going to deliver this stuff?
We will deliver, so our final collection is next Monday, August 12th, and if you didn't see it when you came in, the collection bins are in the front. We're going to get everything together at the end of Rotary meeting that day, and then sometime either the 13th or the 14th, we'll make the delivery to Glendale Fieldbach. We just need to find a time suitable for them.
So you're saying to me that either get it in this Monday or
Else.
or not. Okay, so how many kids do you think you're helping?
I'm not exactly sure of the student body, but I would say a minimum 200.
200 kids. And how many teachers are you touching?
More than 30. And the biggest thing is that, as you know, you guys found out earlier when Kendra announced this about 3 weeks ago, it's so many things that teachers do. Some students come to school, and it's not that their parents don't plan to have them prepared, but financially they just may not be able to provide them the things they need, or they may have a good start at the beginning of the school year, but come December, their folders are raggedy and they can't replenish, or they're out of pencils. And usually the teacher will take from her own or his own pocket to purchase those things. And so this allows them to not have to do that by the support of the Rotary, because those dollars are unreimbursed. So it's not like they can go spend $50 at Target, my favorite store, and get the things and then come back and then get the district to cut a check. We just can't do that. So this is really supportive of both the students and the teachers, and they are extremely appreciative.
Okay, just two more questions.
Sure.
As you look at what has been acquired so far, is there anything that you feel that we're in need of? We should
The third bin is really struggling. So if you could just pay attention to the empty third bin and be supportive in that way. And then also Kendra and I are still gonna, pull some resources together to try to offset so that we can give a good presentation, because we want to represent Rotary in the best way possible.
Okay, so now you got a next question. What's in the third bin? Or what should be in the third bin?
Colored pencils, erasers, glue sticks, bottles of glue, and Clorox wipes. Clorox wipes. Flu season, just remember that.
Okay. And as this wraps up with only one more week, are you proud of this project?
We are first of all, we're proud of the people who immediately, before we even got a chance to come before the club, who just brought stuff by virtue of what they saw in the spoke. So we appreciate that. And then again, we appreciate everyone who has helped us thus far. And obviously we could use a lot more support. So if you could be generous and gracious, we would gladly appreciate it. And I'm sure the district would appreciate it, as well as Glendale Fieldbach.
Okay, so if I want to be a nice guy, I can bring in some Clorox wipes next week.
You could absolutely bring some Clorox wipes in next week.
You are my hero today.
Thank you.
Okay, so the 31st of July has come and gone. That means that the Rotary applications for the first cycle are in, and these applications are now being sent to the relevant committees for scrutiny and for approval to pass on or not. This is the real hard work of Rotary, because these are hard decisions. It's also where the fun takes place as we get to know each other in the committees, which I think is a great thing. This is the stuff that makes Toledo a better place to live. These are often hard discussions that take place because there's only so much money. We give away about $200,000 a year, and that's got to be divided up amongst lots of different organizations who want far more than $200,000. If you want to participate in this, look to your calendar in the spoke or on the website, and decide to go to the meetings that you're interested in. This is very important stuff, and this is why we are Rotarians. As I'm looking at my president remarks, I want to make a personal request. I learned that Marlo is a Peace Corps volunteer returned from Togo last week. I never knew that. That's very interesting to me because I also did 2 years of my life working in the third world, and it got me to thinking, how many people in this room are returned Peace Corps volunteers? I don't know if there's none or if it's just me, and I don't know who it is, but if you are a returned Peace Corps volunteer, I would appreciate it if you'd stop by at the end of the meeting. I'd like to meet you and swap some stories or some lies or whatever we want to do. This is cool. So I've got Judy Lab on my list. I got Brian Kennedy on my list, and neither one of them are here today. So I know. So we have, as a fill-in, our third choice to talk about the foundation and both receive and give grants and gifts is Gary Murphy, my friend. I'm about to give you the lectern, and it's up to you, my friend.
Thank you, President Tim. It's my pleasure today to accept for the foundation a check from the Vassar Foundation. Jim Vassar was a personal friend of mine for many years, and we had many a great time together, drinking, playing golf, and even in his downer years, I was with him basically night and day, and Leslie, of course. We participated in the Village People in 2008. Eric was there. I was the sailor. Jim was the construction worker. We were the Village People. It was a ball. We have a guest from Fort Collins. Jim actually grew up, I think, is that right? That was where he was born and raised, in Fort Collins. So that was kind of interesting. Jim joined the Toledo Rotary in 2005. He was a very active Rotarian and a committee chairman. And we did a lot of work on more than one It's a Ball things. And he was a Paul Harris Fellow. At this time, I would like to have Leslie come up, and we will accept a gift from the Vassar Foundation.
I'd just like to say a couple words. First of all, I've been very fortunate throughout my life to meet some very wonderful people, and a lot of those are people who are sitting in this room. And we had such a great group of friends, and the coworkers that Jim worked with, that immediately after his death in 2013, they said, let's do something to carry on what Jim cared about. And so we organized this golf tournament, and this year will be our 7th annual golf tournament. It's on Saturday, September 14th, so please put that on your calendar. Our registration starts at 9, and then we will have, we'll tee off at 10. Tee off, that's right? I'm not a golfer, so. I said it, and it didn't sound right. We'll tee off at 10. We'll be having the Ohio State game on when they start playing at noon, so for any of you that are Ohio State fans or alums like Jim and I, go Bucks, but we take all kinds, all kinds, even those Michigan fans. So I'm really fortunate today to have some of our committee here to help represent, including Murph, but also Pat Gorey, Greg Steenrod, and Ken Finley. And really, those are the people that do all the hard work. They get everything together. They get the donations for door prizes, make sure that it's a lot of fun, and I get to just show up and be part of it. So I really appreciate it. Jim felt very passionately about Rotary, and so that's why it's really important for us to continue to give back. Additionally, we split our funds between 2 other charities, including the American Brain Tumor Association and the ProMedica Foundation. So we're happy this year. We had a really good turnout last year, and this year we are going to be presenting $7,500 to the Rotary Foundation on behalf of the golf tournament. So please help us give even more next year. Thank you.
My work is never done. On behalf of the Toledo Rotary Club Foundation, it's my pleasure today to present a grant check in the amount of $9,800 to the Victory Center. The grant is to provide funding for management software. Our Community Services Committee received the request, participated in the venting process, and made the decision to recommend the grant approval to our board and the foundation trustees. It is due to the countless Toledo Rotarians who give unselfishly, which enables us to provide these grants. Thank you to everyone who continues to support our foundation so we can continue to aid in supporting the needs of our community. Diane Bart, Executive Director of the Victory Center, is here to accept the grant and share a short description of how our foundation grant of $9,800 will help their organization. Diane?
First of all, thank you so very, very much to Toledo Rotary for this awesome grant. For those of you who don't know, the Victory Center provides free services to cancer patients and survivors all over Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. And we have a second satellite location now in Perrysburg, which we're very excited about, so we're serving even more people. Now, the grant from Toledo Rotary is going to fund a new donor client database. Now, that might not sound very exciting to you, but it was very exciting to us. Prior to this, we had a 10-year-old donor database that we could only access from our Central Avenue location, and we had thousands and thousands of our clients on an Excel spreadsheet. So this new system is cloud-based. It has allowed us to combine everything into one place, and that means that we have been able to be more efficient, more productive, better communication, and it's just all around a good thing for the Victory Center and all the people that we serve. So thank you so very, very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Diane, before you sit down, about how many clients, victims of cancer, have you serviced over the course of your the life of the Victory Center?
Well, we've been around for 23 years, and I would say probably about 15 to 20,000 people that we've helped.
So, in a way, by us giving us this money, we are helping the 20-some thousand friends and neighbors here in Toledo to get over the scourge of cancer.
Absolutely, absolutely. We do have a lot of people who are survivors, 1, 5, 10-year survivors who come back and help those who are newly diagnosed, so it definitely helps us help all them.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Leslie, I never met Jim, and I'm sorry for that. I think he must have been an amazing guy. Thank you for the gift, and thank you for the gift of Jim while he was in Rotary. Brent, could you join us for the introduction of a new member?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. President Tim and fellow Rotarians, it is my pleasure, truly, to introduce Dorothy Mockenstern. Dorothy is the Managing Director for Good Grief of Northwest Ohio. It's a local not-for-profit organization many of you may have heard of. They support free peer support groups to children and teens. That's the focus. And they also help the adults that care for those children and teens. And in the circumstance, really, where there's been a death that's impacted their lives. Throughout her career, Dorothy has worked with organizations across a very wide range of industries, including retail, law, education, and social services, now finding her passion in the not-for-profit sector. As managing director for a small nonprofit, Dorothy wears many hats. But no matter which one she's wearing, her goal is simple: increase awareness of issues surrounding childhood grief and build support for Good Grief's mission and programs. Dorothy's lived in Toledo most of her life, and she and her husband Steve currently live in West Toledo with their 10-year-old boxer, Diesel. They have 2 daughters, Lily, who's a nurse at Toledo Hospital, and Chloe, who's the event coordinator for the Marathon Center for Performing Arts in Findlay. During her free time, she enjoys music, reading, and spending time with her family. Steve and Dorothy are members of St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, and we all like to always know about pet peeves. And her biggest pet peeve is drivers who honk their horn a nanosecond after the light turns green. So fellow Rotarians, please join me in a very warm Rotary welcome for Dorothy Mockensturm.
Do we have our pen? Thank you very much. Dorothy, this is your pin saying that you are a member of the Toledo Rotary Club. You've joined a group of 1,200,000 Rotarians, and I'm sure you're going to be one of the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you.
Gary Corrigan, are you still friends with Dave Welch?
Yes.
Well, please come to the podium and introduce Dave.
Thank you very much. President Tim, Rotary members, I'm here to introduce Dan Welch. Dan's been employed with the county and the city for over 24 years. I'd call that loyalty and success in a challenging environment, as we've all seen. Speaking of challenges, today he represents the Department of Environmental Health. He's been there over 2.5 years, and they have 23 programs, which we'll share some of that with you. But one of those programs is lead poisoning issues, dealing with nuisances in homes. And I think that when Rotary chose lead poisoning as one of its transformational projects, it knew that this is truly a project that can change our city. Lead's been out of the water, out of the paint for over 20-some years, since '78. So what keeps us from getting the lead out? Let's find out from Dave. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, President Ryan, for having me come out today and talk about it. And I realized a lot of friends today, old friends I haven't met in years today, and I didn't realize we're all Rotarians, so kind of a nice surprise. Gary and I talked a few months back about lead poisoning in our children, and he had the idea for me to come out. And one of the challenges we have is education and making people aware. So let me start. So before we get into the whole meat and potatoes of the presentation, I want you to remember 2 things if you take away anything from today's talk. One is childhood lead poisoning, the effects of are irreversible. That child lives with those effects for the rest of their life. And the second thing is, and Gary touched on it, is that paint was banned in 1978, over 40 years ago, and we are still dealing with this issue today. So, lead, know the danger, know your role, know your responsibility. This is a new branding outreach. It was spearheaded by the mayor of the city of Toledo. Basically, the chief of staff, Katie Crosby, came to a group of us and said, hey, we need to rebrand lead, how we approach lead poisoning. The group came up with this: lead, know the danger within. And if you think about it, the danger within your body, the danger of lead within your house, the danger of lead within your environment, where you work, where you play, your hobby. So know the danger within. And you all have a role and a responsibility to play. Lead poisoning affects children from 6 years and younger. And why that is, they're like sponges. They're rapidly developing at that time, and any nutrients, anything they can take in, they're taking in because their body is developing so fast. It's particularly with the brain and the nervous system. It's really incorporating anything they have. And a child that has poor nutrition and is exposed to lead paint readily uptakes that. After 6 years of age, or us, we can all get lead poison if we get exposed too highly. But it's those up to 6 years where the child is developing, where that lead interferes or competes with the development and has long-lasting effects. Lead, the danger within, lower IQs, learning disabilities, even higher lead poisoning. You can have tremors, affects the internal organs, a number of things, even coma and death. But you think about it, at the lower levels, you're still losing some cognitive skills, and those children, again, take that with them for the rest of their life. What's a safe blood lead level? I always have trouble saying that. But in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was 60 micrograms per deciliter. And then they gradually, over the years, they kept redefining what the toxicity effects are in children, and they kept lowering it. Till 2012, when the CD said no level of lead in the bloodstream is acceptable. So you can see we went from 60 all the way down to 0 lead in the bloodstream. And the only way you can tell if a child has lead poisoning is through a blood test. So what's going on in Ohio in our community? Right now, the rates of lead poisoning are declining in the state in the last decade, which is a good thing. The bad thing about the whole issue here is Lucas County rates are higher than the state. And if you live in the city of Toledo, your rates are double that of the state. So we still have some issue. We still got a lot of work to do. And the bottom key point I put down there, rates only determined by those children tested. You might think, well, that's obvious. That's kind of a stupid thing to put up there. But it just tells you that we're not testing all the children that could be tested. That's why we have to make sure that our children are tested. So what are the requirements, or when should you get your child tested for lead? Well, if they regularly visit or live in a house that's built between or pre-1950, if they visit a home with peeling, chipping paint, or they live in a home with peeling, chipping paint, and I'm going to have to put my glasses on because I can't read this. They live in a house pre-1978. We just heard that lead paint was banned in 78. They have a sibling or a playmate that's been diagnosed with lead. That child should be tested for lead poisoning. You can see this, if it's answered to any of those questions, you have to have that child tested. It's the law. Now, I say that not to scare people like, oh my gosh, the law, we're not didn't test our child, what have you. But it shows the importance that the state put on this, that, hey, this is so important, we're going to pass a law to say you should have your child tested if you live or have any of these issues. There's a couple more criteria we can talk about. If the child is on Medicaid, they have to be tested the first and second year. And then that second thing is, does a child live in a high-risk zone? You're probably asking yourself, what is a high-risk zone? The Ohio Department of Health does a modeling of all the different counties in the state. They look at, or zip codes, they look at a number of variety, housing stock, the number of children poisoned, like 20 different items they look at when they model. And then they determine that that's a high-risk zip code, which means a child in that zip code is likely to be lead, or could be lead poisoned. A very high chance of it. So where are these high-risk zip codes? Every zip code in the city of Toledo has been designated as a high-risk zip code. What does that mean? That means every child under the age of 6 should be tested so we can get it on top of it before there's more damage. Right now, they estimate about 3,400 children at any given time are exposed or could be exposed to lead paint in those high-risk zip codes. Where is the source of lead? Well, like I said, the danger within. I mean, it's within the house, the danger within your environment, the danger within your community, your job, your occupation. So some sources of lead: children's toys. A lot of times, not a lot, but there are instances that toys have lead components or lead paint. If you look at the train set, I don't know if any of you have grandkids or whatever, that's Thomas the Train, and they had lead in those. Those are imported toys. Jewelry. A lot of people don't think about it, but again, the danger within your household. When I gave this talk a while back, a woman came up to me and said, "Listen, I have jewelry. I don't know why you have to worry about jewelry. I mean, my kid's not going to wear it. They're not going to put a necklace on a 2-year-old." I said, "But the issue is there is lead in that, and if it's laying around, that child picks it up, and what do children do? They they put it in their mouth so they could get lead poisoning." The idea is be aware of the lead within your home. The other sources of lead that we have, obviously I'm an avid fisherman and lead sinkers. I took my grandkids 2 and 4 out fishing the other day, and I should know better than anybody. And I started putting stuff together and giving them the poles and things, and I realized I could be exposing them to lead. And there are great alternatives to lead sinkers. I just saw about 2 weeks ago, I think it was the state of Massachusetts was doing a buyback of lead fishing sinkers and split shot. Oh, that's good. We're moving in the right direction. It's not really the biggest source of poisoning our children. But as a news article went on, it was sponsored by the Michigan Loon Association. They were trying to protect the loon. So we'll take what we can get. Manufacturing, pottery, you can see all those different things where lead could be a problem. But the real source that we have to worry about is lead paint, peeling, chipping paint. It may seem a pretty easy thing to spot and take care of, but it's out there. The other thing that we don't talk about enough, most people think about peeling, chipping, but the paint dust is a huge problem in our homes. If you have a window or door with friction where it's going up and down and there's paint in that windowsill, it creates a dust, and that dust can lay on the windowsill. You've got paint or chipping, peeling paint on the floor of the porch. You walk through that, you bring that into the house, and where are your children going to be? They're going to be out crawling around on it, getting it on their hands, and of course where their hands go. Good source, unfortunately, of lead poisoning. There's simple things you can do to rectify some of this, and we'll get to that in a minute. As we said, lead paint was banned in 1978, and we're still working on this issue. Toledo, believe it or not, has over 100,000 homes built pre-1978. And there'll be a slide here in a minute that will show you the concentration of older homes. The earlier the home was built, the more likely it has in lead. Lead paint peaked in the 1920s. But let's see where these houses are. Well, quick slide here. From 77 back to 60, about 24% of the houses may have lead. You go back to the 1940s, almost 70%. And if it's pre-1940, you're almost a 90% likelihood of having lead in paint in that house. So let's see where these are at. This is a map of Toledo. The red is basically pre-1950 households. The yellow is, I think, 60 to 77. So you can see, no surprise, that the older houses are in the central city in East Toledo. And unfortunately, and it's another day's topic, this affects our low-income and our minority community more than anybody. There's a great report. I stole this slide from it. It's the report out of the Kirwan Institute of The Ohio State University. It goes into it, real easy read. If you ever want it, my contact information will be here at the end. Let me know and I can get it to you. Great study done. And the thing is, they use that study for the Toledo lead law. That's how they came up with the phases and things. And we'll get into that a little bit more. There are laws on the books besides the testing. Ohio Administrative Code 3701-30 requires us to get involved when a child is lead poisoned. Any child that goes out and gets lead not lead point, gets lead tested in their blood and they come back with an elevated blood lead level, those come to my department. We have to answer every single one of those. And there's 2 tiers that we actually work on. The first tier is what we call 5 to 9s, and that is if they have a blood lead level of 5 micrograms per deciliter to 9, we have to do a questionnaire. And that questionnaire is basically trying to determine where the exposure of the lead came from. And like I told you before, 90% of the time, 99% of the time, it's the house and the lead paint. But we have to do this questionnaire. We go a little bit above and beyond this. If the family will have us out, we'll send a public health nurse to do the questionnaire, because by law, all I have to do to meet the requirement is to do it over the phone. But we'll send a public health nurse out to go over the questionnaire, but more importantly, to go over how to live in a house that has lead or could expose a child to lead. I mean, simple things we can teach a family: nutrition. If you have a poor nutrition, that body in the children up to 6 years of age is pulling everything they can, that lead gets readily taken into the system and causes the damage. But if you're getting proper nutrition, if you're getting fruits and vegetables, you get the calcium and the iron, and it competes with the lead, and it's not as much uptaken into the blood. The other thing is Gary and I were talking about simple things. If you have a porch with chipping, peeling paint, don't walk across that porch and track it into the house. Take your shoes off or put a carpet over it where you don't track it in. Because those are some of the things we find when we're out there. Is it could just be a porch with chipping, peeling paint that a family's walking in and out, and they're bringing that dust into the house, and that's where the child gets poisoned. Another simple one where you have a window where it's going up and down, causing friction in the dust. And we had one where they had a crib up against that window. Simple thing, make sure you keep it clean, but move the crib away from that. So it's very beneficial for us to go out and talk to the families. The second one is if you have the child has a blood lead level above 10 micrograms per deciliter, we have to come out and do a full-blown assessment. We do the questionnaire, but we go out to the house, we take the public health nurse with us. We have an XRF gun, which is basically just an X-ray gun, and we sample the entire house. We look for where the concentrations of lead is. We look to see where there's dust or where there could be dust. We use dust wipes. Then we get a full report together, and we actually issue lead hazard control orders. And basically what that is just saying, here's where all your lead is in your house. Here's how you can correct it, and you have to correct it. It is the law. Now, we could go down the way and tell you what happens when a landlord or if somebody does not correct it and leaves that lead hazard after we issued a lead control order, because that is a public health order. Our next route is to issue unfit vacate. And we don't want to throw anybody out on the road, but that's what happens because the state will not allow us to keep somebody in a house that has lead poisoning or lead hazard control orders. So those are some of the issues that we deal with. The problem, and you probably recognize this already, is the fact that this is reactionary. The child gets tested, gets an elevated blood lead level test that says they're up there. Then they contact us. We go out and look at the house and say, yep, it's a house. So it's a very reactive. I mean, we're kind of using children as lead detectors. Unfortunately, this is a law we've worked with for 20 years. Now, Toledo was in the right, in the right frame of mind when they went to be proactive. Take care of the house before it gets to the point where a child is poisoned for lead. And really, we've seen in other cities that where they've enacted similar laws like this, their lead levels have dropped. Rochester, New York is the finest example. Actually, the Toledo lead law was modeled after the Rochester, New York law. 2016 is when City Council passed that lead-safe law. As we all know, that the law was declared unconstitutional just before the first deadline. It is on being appealed. Both the county prosecutor and the city law department are appealing this decision. But in the meantime, the mayor, health department, health commissioner, we've been working on some other things we don't want this lag. We've already let this thing lag for 40 years since the lead paint was banned. So we want to keep the momentum going. We actually started a volunteer program to get your house certified. We have 3 tiers, the lead safe and healthy home. It's an 8-year certificate. You can call us. We can come out and do this. It's basically the Ohio Department of Health inspection, where you come out, take the XRF gun, identify all the different areas that have lead and where there's potential for exposure. The second one is a lead safe certificate. This is basically the Toledo law, where they go and do the visual inspection and do the dust wipes. And then the third one is what we call safe and healthy homes. It's just a visual inspection, but what it does is we go out into the house, and we not only look for chipping, peeling paint, but we also look for how do you store your chemicals? Do you have a smoke detector? There's about 8 to 12 things that we go out and look at to try to make sure that home is safe for that family and that child. Those are 3 of our voluntary programs. I will tell you, because they're voluntary and we haven't promoted it as much as we should, not a lot of interest right now. So, lead, know the danger within, know your role, know your responsibility. We always tell folks, parents, renters, buyers, whatever, make sure you ask if the house was built before 1978. Check for peeling, chipping paint. Check to see if it does have a lead safe certificate. And then above all, if you live in, not even if you don't live if you live outside of those high risk zones, you should have your child tested, probably at 1 or 2 years of age at the beginning. The one thing we're trying to do here is if you look at the check to see if they have a lead safe certificate, we know the law is no longer out there, but we're trying to change the culture that people, I remember when I bought my first house 30 years ago, I took my dad with me to inspect it. Now when you buy a house, you get a home inspector. You ask for a home inspector or you ask for a home inspection. Was it done on the house before you buy it? We'd like to see this happen with lead. Does this place I'm going to rent, buy, or does this daycare, does it have a healthy home certificate? Does it have a lead safe certificate? It's got to start to change the culture. And last but not, what can we all do? You're doing the right thing today. Educate yourself and talk to your family and your friends about it. Lead is very serious, as we can see. Ask when you're buying or renting a home or sending your child to daycare. Start to get that culture to change. And I know that's the way the Rotarians work. You are always very good advocates for prevention of child lead poisoning. That's it. If we have some questions. Sure, go ahead.
Is there a device or something that you can buy to test if there is? And the second question, is a child being tested, is it just a normal blood test?
So the first question was, is there a test or something that you can do? Yes, you can go to like Home Depot or some of those, and they have a small lead test where you can wipe it. It turns, I think, pink or something like that. It's not the most accurate test, but it will help you identify if there's lead there. The key that you should always look for is dust. Dust on the windowsills, dust on the floor, if you have paint. And one of the things I didn't touch on is that people get concerned when we started the lead safe law that when we came out, or the inspectors came out, they said, why do I need this dust wipe? It's perfect, it's beautiful, it's painted well. But just the act of renovating that house, sanding those paint chips down, creates lead dust. And a lead dust wipe tells us that it was cleaned up properly. And it also tells us if they know how to clean up properly. Because lead dust is probably one of the key issues for poisoning of our children. And your other question,
Is it normal blood?
yep. So what they do with a blood test, normally they just do a finger prick. And if it comes back elevated, they have to have a confirmation test, which is actually intravenous. If you want to wonder why we have those 2 tiers from 5 to 9 and then 10, there's nothing below the 4. We still educate them, but the accuracy of the blood test is about plus or minus 4. Phil?
Hey, hi. 2 questions. First one, what about the suburbs? Because Maumee, Perrysburg, Sylvania, they all have aging housing stock as well. I don't know if this is a question so much as a suggestion, but isn't there some way they should be included in this public relations campaign?
They should be, and we're trying to incorporate that. I mean, if you think about it, look at some of the housing stock in back in, like Maumee and Perrysburg or any of those burgs out there. They're older stock, so they have lead paint. This is just not a city of Toledo. I kind of focused on that just because of the lead safe law, but this is for any community. If you have a house built before 1978 or pre-1950s, you should be cautious.
So for housing stock that falls within the category of likely having lead paint, if it's got vinyl siding and the interior paint is intact, then is it considered lead safe? Or maybe, I guess what I'm getting at, can you define the difference between lead abatement and lead safe?
So, well, lead abatement is when we come in and have the children that are above 10 micrograms per deciliter. Those are the ones we issue order. Those are the ones you have to do the full abatement. Some of it could be encapsulating paint, but a lot of times it's removing windows and things of that sort. Very, very expensive to do. The other side is if you have the vinyl siding and you maintain your property well, it's still not, we don't consider it lead safe. The only time we'll consider it lead safe is if you can go in and take a dust wipe to make sure that whatever you've done, renovated, whatever you've been doing, keeping it properly clean, that you've taken care of that dust. Because we can see, just because it's maintained well, at one time there might have been chipping paint, and if it's not cleaned up, that child could still be exposed to lead. So we always want that test to confirm that it is lead-free, or lead-safe, not lead-free.
First of all, this is Reyes Chaudhry. My question is that the first questioner was taller than me, then he asked 2 questions. So I was feeling disadvantaged. So I'm going to ask 2 questions as well. First of all, in high-risk zip codes, we have a supposedly fixed number of 6-year-old kids living, and we can easily sort of track them and count them. Can we mandate that they should have a blood level done by age 6? Is it possible to mandate that?
Well, right now, if I'm hearing you right, the state law does mandate that. If you're in a high-risk zone, or if you meet any of those other criteria, a playmate that has diagnosed with lead poisoning or elevated lead levels, there's a whole bunch of things that is mandated. The problem is the enforcement part of it. I mean, it's just basically, this is very important, you need to get your child tested, it's the law, but we're not going to drag anybody away.
What's the compliance rate with it that in a given areas?
Don't hold me to this, but I think it's around 30%.
30, that's very low then. Yeah. And my second question is, I'm not a pediatrician, I'm a physician, but not a pediatrician. What are the initial symptoms? Let's say the level is 20 microgram per deciliter. Does the patient have any initial symptoms that they should seek help?
Yeah, the problem is that's why at that age and you get those symptoms, a lot of them are the symptoms that, they might have some other ailment. Weight loss, irritability, headaches, there's 4 or 5 other, but they're kind of masked by other type of diseases or problems like that. There's nothing that kind of says, this child's got lead poisoning. The only way we can tell, obviously, is from a blood test.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
David, great to have you here. It's a wonderful presentation that you've made, and it's a very important topic. I've seen it firsthand with working with lower-income families that lead poisoning is just so detrimental to these children's health. What resources are available when there's notable lead in the house? At one point, there were some grants available. Is that still available to owner-occupants in our community?
It's actually, there is. It's the HUD grant. The city of Toledo has that grant. It administers it. It's a couple $1 million. You've got to meet a whole list of criteria. Not speaking poorly of the government, but they add so many facets to trying to get through to get to that grant. You have to bring so many positive identification, tax returns. And a lot of these families are lower income and they don't have it, so they don't qualify for it. So right now, that's basically the only funding out there is that $2 million HUD grant. And it's very, very hard to administer. The city does a great job at it, but there are so many hoops that you have to get through to qualify for it.
Thank you, David. You've talked many times about the blood testing. Who and how is that being coordinated in Lucas County?
Any physician that gets blood or can draw it, we draw it at the health department. We send a nurse out, and they'll draw the finger pricks. Those are basically, it's kind of a hodgepodge. And that's part of the problem is getting people educated to say, hey, you need to have your child tested. There's nobody really besides us right now saying, hey, you got to get that child tested.
So are there organized sites from time to time?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
We go out to, they were just out at the Frederick Douglass Center. They had a community event out there. Our public health nurse went out there and took tests. We go to daycares. We try to get out as much as we can. You can come to our office. We can do it there. Most of it comes, I don't know the breakout, if it's from private providers or if it's from our staff. I don't know what that breakout is.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Understanding that the paint chip issue is massive, knowing what happened in Flint in the past few years with their water quality, and knowing that we talk about water a lot in Toledo, what is the safety level from a lead perspective of water in Toledo and the surrounding areas?
There is no lead safe level. And I will tell you, though, you have to be very proud of the diligence of your folks that work out at our our water plant. I was a director for about 3 years, and that was one of my responsibilities. These folks are testing the water every couple hours for different things, and then, like now, the microsystem, they're doing about daily. But they do keep a close eye on it, and they will tell you that, just like what happened in Flint, there's like a film that builds up on the inside of that pipe. And when they changed the chemistry of the water, that film went away, and any lead was exposed. So if you don't change the chemistry, the alkalinity, whatever of your water, it should be fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Sure. That is, if a child is tested for lead, he tests positive, does that trigger any activity from any sources in the community?
That's where we step in. Those children that get tested get to us, then we go out and investigate. And like I said, the kind of the problem with the law is the 5 to 9s. We just go out and do a questionnaire. That child could potentially become a 10, and then we go out and do the full-blown assessment to determine where that lead is coming from.
What's the lag time between the assessment being made and you being notified?
For the above 10, within a couple of days, we'll be out there. We like the problem you have is there's a perception, here we're a government here to help you, and a lot of times parents don't want us for a variety of reasons to come in and investigate where that lead is. One, they may be afraid of, they may lose their house if they can't, control the lead. I will tell you, if there's no lawyers in the room, I will not issue vacate orders to owner-occupied. If they can't afford it, we try to do everything we can to help them, but I will not, by law, I should be doing that.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
David, we have a book here in honor, and thanks for the presentation, that wonderful presentation you just made. It's about the history of Toledo, and we will also make a contribution in your name to the Rotary Polio Plus Fund. So thank you very much. Where is Chuck? Chuck, as you're coming to the podium or to the speaker, next week our speaker will be Melissa Hopfer from the Nutrient Resource Inventory Mapping Program. And Chuck, make me laugh. That lead story was tough to deal with.
President Tim, I think there's a meeting of the Invocation Committee after this meeting in the Mount Vernon.
In the North Cape room.
North Cape room. There we go.
That's not funny.
No. Well, it could be. You never know. Yesterday was a very important day in American history. The world's longest hot dog was made on August 4th, 2006. The dog measured 197 feet long and a bun measuring 198 feet, so way shorter than the bun, and was made by the Shizuoka meat producers of Shizuoka, Japan, and the All Japan Bread Association. No, I'm not done. Here's a hot dog story. The children were lined up in the cafeteria at St. Joseph Catholic Church for lunch. At the head of the table was a large tray of hot dogs. Sister Mary Rosamond posted a sign on the hot dog tray, "Take only one, God is watching." Further along the lunch line, at the other end of the table, was a large pile of chocolate chip cookies. One child whispered to the other, "Take all you want, God is watching the hot dogs."
Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.